evening, everybody. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 2 of the Case King Pro Series here in Season 13, where we are heading to the wonderful, wonderful land of Italy and to Misano race circuit, where a fantastic location to follow up what was an incredible season opener at Imola, where we saw George Boothby taking the race victory after a very, very busy one. In George's race, it was a little bit easier for him to cope with and deal with, and he was able to put together a fantastic drive. But it is safe to say that behind George Boothby in that Ferrari 296, there was carnage, there was chaos, there was drama, crashes, adrenaline-filled action all the way from start to finish, and I have no doubt whatsoever that this Misano race circuit is going to be doing just that as well. Look at that little snazzy overlay and introduction to this one as well. An incredible, incredible circuit and landmark to follow up that season opener. Misano, such an interesting place to go racing in these GT cars because there's such a balance between high speed, low speed corners, and also dependency on straight line speed capabilities. It's of course also notoriously difficult to avoid those track limit warnings as well, and if you get a drive-through penalty as a result of getting those few cuts, that is it, game over when you have these relatively short races. It'll be 60 minutes of action here in the Pro Series tonight, and with the grid that we have lining up on the way, I think it's going to be a mighty fine, cracking evening of action. Also, big thank you again for all the amazing supports last week on the opener for 2024 and Season 13, a record-breaking stream, and now over 1,500 of you here over on the LFM channel, so big thank you for all of the new people that followed. A big warm welcome to you, and we are going to be getting into some incredible action for tonight, I have no doubt. Take a little bit of a tour of this incredible circuit. 4.2 kilometers, 16 turns of Italian motorsport goodness. That's opening chicane. Very tricky and very important to make sure that you nail how you clip each of those apexes. Traction out of turn 3 will be a bit of a tricky one as you go further on into the race. Those very tight right-handers through 4 and 5, opening up the exit out of turn 6 for this big main first overtaking opportunity. Through the kind of not really a corner of King of turn 7 into the hairpin at turn 8 and immediately into the next one with this double apex turn between 9 and 10. Really want to take that as one flowing series of corners. Now onto this back, not quite straight but pretty straight in the grand scheme of things, but as you make your way through into turns 12, 13 and then the heavy braking zone of 14, it's very tricky to get an overtake done there because you are side by side at great speed. And that series of corners is a very, very mean one indeed if you do get it wrong. So we'll be putting our Pro Series drivers to the absolute test for this evening. But I have no doubt that with the talent that we have in this field, they will be looking to deliver another incredible evening of action where we'll be getting underway for 15 minutes of qualifying in just a moment. So drivers are in the server and they are able to get their last bits and pieces dialed in for practice and see what they can do in qualifying on the race, of course. And we'll soon talk about the fact of how you prepare in these final moments can be pivotal to the way that your race plays out. Misano, definitely a circuit where you can make progress through the field. Long straights give you those opportunities and heavy braking zones as well. So whether you've got a car that really has kind of advantages on the straights and you're able to utilize that top speed to really motor your way past the competition, or if your strengths come from your cornering and braking capabilities, Misano is going to allow you to really explore that as well. So definitely plenty of opportunities for action throughout this one, and we'll be seeing how we get on. So in these final few moments of practice, we will also get a bit of a glimpse perhaps how the weather side of things is looking as well. Now, I must admit, I've attempted to join the server, and I don't seem to be getting very far at all. Let's have another crack at this, because seemingly I cannot make my way in. So I shall try to do some fiddling in the background, see if we can work out what is going on there. But I'll be interested to hear from you guys in the chat because, of course, Misano, a circuit which, you know, with the way that those strengths play between, you know, one car to the other, Mercedes traditionally has been one that's very quick. We've got the likes of Luke Whitehead back in that car as well. Be interesting to see how he gets on because, of course, last week at Imola wasn't really the opener to the season for the two-time Case King Pro Series champion that he would have wanted. But now very much looking like this could be territory for that car to be well equipped to compete for race victories, which, of course, we know he is very capable of. So we'll see how the young Brit gets on. And other cars also interesting in this sort of field as well. Whether you end up having something like the Ferrari, which is going to be a car that really allows you to push continuously over the course of the race. Really push on the the aspects of the handling capabilities, being able to manage those tyres as you make your way across that 60-minute distance, because whilst of course it's not the most demanding of races in terms of length and endurance aspects, it is very much one that, with the nature of this track, potentially with some hot temperatures that we're looking like as well around this Italian circuit, is going to have an effect, and being able to manage your tyres over the course of the race is something that these drivers are going to be very much looking to try to do as well. And I have another attempt on making my way into the server, and fingers crossed on the second time around that we will be able to make our way in to this one and see how our drivers are getting on. I do believe we have a full sign-up for this evening once again, with all 200 people on the way for this one. And it's very much looking like we have some mighty talent once again, as we have come to expect in the world of the Pro Series, because it always brings the best talent together that you find in the world of ACC, and very much looking like it could be another evening for that as well. So fingers crossed, if we have another attempt on making our way in, we'll be able to see how our drivers are getting on. So, found the server, password entered, trying to make our way in, and the answer is... maybe? Possibly? Hey! I know that you guys at your end cannot see that side of things, but we have at least managed to finally make our way in. We should be able to see how our drivers are getting on in just a second. I'll fiddle about with getting the overlays sorted and ready to go, and then we can see how our drivers are getting on for these final moments of practice. We've got about 5 minutes left on the clock in order to dial in these setups, get themselves used to whether they're doing that one lap running just before the race and really looking to try to optimize track position. And as we saw last week, track position very much can be a pivotal aspect, because whereabouts you find yourself in the field on that opening series of corners can be a game changer to how the rest of your evening plays out. And we saw that even some of the very best on the world of LFM and ACC getting themselves into a little bit of trouble with the carnage and chaos that we had going on. So we should be able to make our way over and have a little bit of a look at how our drivers are getting on in these final moments of preparation in just a moment. And fingers crossed, if all is well and good, just like that, we should be able to see our drivers tackling this Misano race circuit. Predictions for pole position already coming in, and that's a question that I want a lot of you to answer. Who do you think is going to be starting in that P1 spot for this round? First bid has already gone the way of Darren McCormack, a man that quite clearly is a very, very formidable driver in the world of ACC. He has won time and time again, but at Imola, it wasn't really the season opener that the Irishman would have wanted. Backing for Luke Whitehead. Pretty reasonable bet between the Mercedes being extremely quick around here and knowing how substantial that advantage can be. When you combine that with the talent that Luke Whitehead possesses behind the wheel, very much could be looking to see that car on pole position. We've got also support for Tinko van der Velde as well, and Marco Bischoff. Such a fantastic mix of the bunch here. So we've got Marco Bischoff in that Lamborghini. Of course, Dario Iemolo, the Italian driver who currently sits at the top of the timing sheet. He was the one that took the race win last season. Has made the switch to McLaren, but we did see that Lamborghini was very, very quick. Tinko van der Velde, Pro Series champion in his own right, the Williams eSports driver, back in the server once more. and he will be looking to wield his Mercedes around here. He can be very quick. And of course, you can never count out George Boothby, your championship leader, your winningest driver of the Pro Series across all of the seasons that we have had, and also the man that has taken more pole positions than anybody else. So will he see the prancing horse take another pole position on home soil? We'll have to wait and see. We're waiting for a representative lap time from the British driver to come through, and we'll see whereabouts that looks to place him as Dara McCormack. We said he could be pretty handy, putting himself up to the top of the timing sheet. But also, don't forget, we have a lot of other big names in the server as well. Timu Karppinen returning once again. Unfortunately, not in Bentley. I'm going to remind him about that, I think, for every single race over the course of this season, because I haven't quite forgiven him yet. But Timu in that number 23 Grip Hacks Engineer Lamborghini, a car that he has taken race victories in before, and will be looking to try to see if he can get the Raging Bull to do so once again. Nicholas Human, the Unicorns of Love driver, very quick. Another one of our Mercedes. We have had plenty of Mercedes entered for this season, and they is looking very quick indeed. But also, another man returning to the Pro Series, Amir Hosseini, driving this number 31 Ferrari, a mightily quick driver. He's been a little bit in the shadows, I think, over the last year or so in the world of ACC. I haven't quite seen so much of him, but this man is extremely fast. He is mighty over the course of one lap and can put together some very special laps indeed, so he could very much be in the fight as well. Be interested to see how his pace compares to George Boothby in that 296 as well. Jardier was competing in a race around here the other day, looking very quick in the McLaren. So we'll see how he gets on. And of course, we've also got the likes of Malinowski. This Porsche going to be very interesting, because top speed isn't going to be as terrible as we have seen, of course, in the past of its predecessor and also pre-LFM BOP. And again, big thank you for all the community involvement that's made that side of things possible to get closer racing than ever. But it's still not really a strength of this car. The strength is going to come from its capabilities in the corners, how late you can brake. And Mathieu, he's definitely one of the latest and most aggressive when it comes to overtakes, so he'll be able to make progress through the field, potentially even starting at the very front. Who knows how much pace that car has over one lap. We saw Luke Whitehead very much being able to utilise all of the core features of that car to his advantage last season, and Massier in the same team as well, I have no doubt will be looking to do the very same. We have some local support from, of course, managers to drivers. I think it's fair that you cheer on your drivers in this series, and of course also amazing always to see in the chat anybody cheering on people in the surf. It gives you that little bit of extra boost of confidence to be able to push on. This is an interesting man as well, number 36 car, Igor Ognorodnikov in the BMW. I think he was right at the very top of Split 2 last week, because we had a record-breaking ELO for top split in the Pro Series at season opener, and he just missed out on Split 1, but he is very quick. Quite an aggressive driver, and when he is on it, he is formidable, so he could be looking to make his way through the field as well. An interesting choice with the BMW, a car that really allows you to push and explore its limits. It's a fairly forgiving chassis, similar to the Aston Martin in terms of it doesn't bite you too hard, but it can give you a lot to work with. Maybe not the best in any specific department, although straight line speed definitely a handy feature of that car, so that could be very useful around here. But it's one that just allows you to push it lap after lap and not really ever making you feel like that you're going to die at any moment in time, which there are cars which very much can do that. I think Tinko van der Velde very much kind of had that opinion of his championship-winning Audi R8 when he was utilising that. He made the switch over to the BMW, now finds himself in the Mercedes, and kind of, I think, back into a car that I would say fits that sort of billing of being on the trickier side to drivers. They all funnel their way out of the pit lane because qualifying is about to get underway and ready to go. 15 minutes for these drivers to put together the best lap that they possibly can, and I do believe it may be Amir Hosseini that is leading that pack away out of the pit lane. It is indeed, so we will look to head on for an onboard of him. Of course, we've got the likes of Niels Narks in that very recognisable BS Plus competition BMW in the background. He was in the Aston Martin for a season, now has made his way back across. We've got a yellow flag ready for Krzysztof Makowski. I think he's just returned to the pit lane. Obviously want to make a bit of an adjustment, but it looks like it's all sunny skies here at Misano. And whilst for qualifying then, that may not be too much of a concern for any of these guys, but perhaps if you're in the Mercedes, for example, a car that is rather notorious for munching through its front tyres, those hotter temperatures could be a little bit of a concern, because managing that over the course of the entire race is going to be tricky, and there's no doubt about that. Whereas the likes of the Ferraris, the BMWs, the Lamborghinis, even sometimes the Porsches, depending on the way that you set up that car, it doesn't quite burn through its tyres as much as it used to. So, the 992 especially handles a lot more like a mid-engine platform than its predecessor, so it doesn't suffer in quite the same way. So these are all factors that these guys are going to be very much aware of, very much considering, and I'm sure have prepared for, because these are some of the very best. We'll be going on board, though, with Amir for the opening lap of qualifying here at Misano for round number 2 of Season 13 in the Case King Pro Series. So out of the final corner, they're trying to maximise all the usage of the curves as he barrels on down towards turn 1. Look at the entry curve usage all the way across and a bit more, and over those curves on the inside of the first apex and the second. Not using quite so much, because you want to make sure that the traction is nicely squared off as you make your way through turn 3. Upshift towards the turn 4, then braking just in front of that 50-meter board. Expect that board to go flying at some point soon as you make your way through his double apex. Really got to be patient here on the throttle and then whip it through turn 6 and maximise the exit. Carry on the speed down towards turn 7 through the kink as you head under the bridge, and then now using all of that entry curve again. This is why this track is so difficult in terms of track limits, because you need to use everything. The curbs are very, very small. They allow you to take advantage of them, but they will bite back in track limit warnings. Now wide entry in towards turn 9. Bring it back towards the apex for turn 10 on the power as early as you can. Run out wide onto the AstroTurf, and now let the speed build up into 4th gear now as he flies on through into turn 11. Turn 12 will be pretty easy as well, but you'll see him take a little bit of a wider line, so then he can really swing around in towards 13, trying to keep it within track limits. Oh, that was mighty tight. I think he may have exceeded there on the lap, so we'll have to go for another attempt. We'll see what the lap time is from the number 31 car as he now makes his way through turn 15. You want to be flat through there if you can, and then in towards the final turn. Use as much curb on the entry as you can. A little bit missing of that apex, and Amir, as he comes across the line, it would have been a 33.7, but he did indeed invalidate that one, and the opening bid going the way of the likes of Niels Narks, a 33.2 ahead of Huber. Darren McCormack now gets his Mercedes to the top of the timing sheets, and we already had those bids coming in for him to be on pole, and he's looking mightily quick. Huber P3, George Boothby displaces him immediately as I say that. Tingo van der Velde up there as well, last season's winner. IMLO in P4 in that McLaren. As we see everyone else, Marco Bischoff coming on in, of course, in the number 1 McLaren. And I think on my introduction, I forgot that he made his way over to the British outfit. Of course, taking that Sprout Esport Lamborghini last season, now seeing him in this McLaren. Be very interesting to see what he can do. Luke Whitehead now goes into P3. Mercedes 1 and 3 at the moment, but Darren McCormack looking mightily quick. He's already 2 tenths up on his previous time. He's been making his way in towards the 32s if he can hook this one up. Coming through that penultimate hairpin, getting a nice little toe of Maciej Malinowski in the Porsche just up ahead. Climbing through his speed, blasting on through. This is what's so good about GT racing. You hear the flat 6 of Maciej's car rolling through, and then this burbly V8 goodness that comes from the Mercedes comes following on. It's great, we have this homologation between the BOP of the cars, but there's just these different design choices. It means they always have these subtle strengths and weaknesses between them, and those little unique characteristics that make them fantastic. But I tell you what, someone who's being especially fantastic right now, whilst Niels Merg on P1 temporarily, Darren McCormack's about to shatter the timing sheets on a 32.777 from the number 24 car. A mighty time from the Irishman, and right now there doesn't seem to be anybody that is getting close with that. Maybe Marco Bischoff if he can hook this one out of the final corner. Tinko van der Velde breaking into the 32s as well. Diamelo very close on a 0.0. Bischoff going to be close as well, maybe a 0.8 from the McLaren. It is extremely close towards the line, hooked up the final sector beautifully in that McLaren. Of course, straight line speed pretty handy on this car as well, and just 18 thousandths of a second away from McCormack at the top, who again is going even faster. So we're putting in a few consecutive laps here as Luke Whitehead gets himself just a couple of hundredths or so ahead of Tinko van der Velde, and he's going to head back to the pit. Whereabouts are some of our other drivers? Another man coming to the world of the Pro Series once more. Adam Spansky for ITB Racing gets himself into P3. Fantastic effort from number 6 car. We saw this man last time in an Audi, and he was very, very quick, time and time again, being at the pointy end of the grid and challenging the likes of Tinko van der Velde and just keeping him on his toes from time to time. Great to have him back and see him in the ITB Racing McLaren and what he is able to utilise out of that. But we're looking back towards the man that sits on provisional pole, 0.1 of a second up on his previous lap time, making his way through turn 15, losing a little bit of that advantage. He goes through a bit. How's he fare through the final corner? It's a very aggressive entry. I think he might have lost a little bit on the exit, be marginal to the line. Will it be an improvement? And it is the first 0.6 of the session. Marco Bischoff, though, looking extremely quick, although he's gone deep, I think, on the exit, the hairpin. He had the advantage for a brief moment in time. See what Marco Bischoff can do. Narks improving to a low 0.8 as well. Nothing between a lot of these cars. Boothby now up to P4, improving in that Ferrari. Marco Bischoff trying to see if he can do anything, and he's just a couple of hundredths shy of his previous best. But this BMW of Niels Narks looking very, very capable and confident around here. And that is a car that could provide some upset. The wealth of experience from this man, combined with that straight line speed capability, the ability to push that car time and time again consistently. And I tell you what, if he's able to hook this one up, he is looking very, very quick. Not the best of exits out of turn 10, but he is showing as going purple in the session at the moment. Currently sitting about 1.5 tenths down on the Irishman's time in that number 24 Mercedes, but with 7.5 minutes left on the clock, the German driver coming in towards turn 13 now, using all the curb and a bit more. It's incredible how much you're able to utilize around this circuit, and he now makes his way out of the hairpin, and it's a good exit out of the hairpin as well into 15, trying to maximize the width of the track at every single instance. Turn 16, trying to hook up. Is he using any curb on the exit? Using a little bit. Got to be careful. It's going to be a big time for Narks, I think, as he tries to go for pole. And for time being, he does. But George Boothby's looking fast as well in the 296. He's up by a tenth as well. I'm not sure he's quite going to get himself to the front row. It's going to be very close. He might just pit Marco Bischoff, though, on this improvement to get himself up into P3. The Veloce driver, as he crosses the line, does indeed exactly a tenth away from Narks' effort. But Niels Narks, I don't think he's ever had a pole position in the Pro Series. He's still hunting for that race win, but maybe those stars could start to align today at round 2 of season 13. Noah Reeder, the second of the Sprout Esports cars, someone's bailed out of their lap time on the right-hand side, but for number 21, trying to jump his way up the order, he does to P4. Big effort there from Noah Reeder, and displaces his teammate, the two-time Pro Series champion of Marco Bischoff in that number 1 car, and gets him demoted down to P6. Jardier now the next of the McLarens for Yassit Esports, making his way through the final corner. Let's see what the beloved Striva can do heading towards the line. It's a good improvement, almost into the 32s. I don't think he'll quite be a 32. Actual fact, I think he backed out of the lap at the very end. I'm not sure he invalidated at the final corner, but he did drop a lot of lap time right before the line. Maybe ran out of fuel. I'm not sure. Of course, running out of fuel, for anyone that was here last week, and if you weren't here, I suggest you go and look at the stream over on the YouTube channel, because it was a mighty, mighty race. But I think we saw one of the saddest things that I've ever had, the kind of almost a displeasure of commentating over. Paul Lobmeyer put together a stellar drive in his Porsche, was looking to cross the line, I believe in P7, would have actually been promoted to P6 due to post-race penalties for Philip Menard, who dropped down the order just a little bit in the end. And right as on the final approach to the line, he ran out of fuel. His advantage over the cars behind was lost. He dropped about 3 positions, 10 meters away from the finish line. It was such a sad moment for that man, but it was still, I believe, his best results in the Pro Series. And a well-deserved one of that. He finished P9 after all post-race inquiries were done. Look how busy this track is. And it was Jardier running out of fuel. I had a feeling the car just seemed to slow down as he went towards the line. So a bit of a miscalculation there for Jardier. He'll go out again. You can see just how many cars have got on circuit. Of course, we have a full grid of 40 in the server. As right now, the only man that is improving inside of our top 10 is Luke Whitehead. 2/10 up on his lap time, having to deal with a little bit of traffic in the final sector. That's not an ideal approach into turn 15. He has lost a little bit of time on the Delta as a result of that. Just McLaren not quite able to get out of the way, sliding his way through turn 16. The TC0 meta in full force. And as Luke Whitehead improves, it's good enough to get himself into P7. But for the reigning champion, would have been wanting to extract a little bit more out of his car. It's a platform that I haven't seen him really utilise at any previous point in his sim racing career. I think he may have had it kind of from time to time, but very much has been one to use the likes of the Porsche and the McLaren, I do believe. So it's a little bit new territory for Luke Whitehead, but I have no doubt that he'll be able to dial himself in very, very soon, and clearly still dabbling with pace amongst the very best, with McCormack setting the benchmark of what that Mercedes is capable of, but not quite the benchmark in the server, because that honour still heads away of Nils Knox. George Boothby was on a lap. He's invalidated that attempt, so he'll be having to go out again as 3.5 minutes left on the clock to go. Not many more opportunities to get a final attempt in, and Luke Whitehead just heading out of the pits for the final time. Looking at Matthias Kuhn at the moment in this number 9 McLaren. A 10th up as it stands. Also got Albin Manson further down the order. 3/10 up on his lap time. Pollock got 1.7 seconds up on his lap time. I think we're still waiting for a representative time from him, as Matthias coming into the final corner. He's got a BMW front. May get a little bit of aero wash off that front splitter. Felt like he had a bit of understeer in the final turn there. Loses some of his advantage, but he does improve up to a 33.1 and 21st place. Jardier back out on circuit. 2/10 up on his lap time. Hopefully fueled up to be able to complete this one and see what he is capable of. And I have to say, we'll keep an eye on the Deltas, but Marco Bischoff right now as well, looking extremely handy around the circuit. A 10th up as it stands. He was briefly 2/10 up on his lap. And we'll see what the German driver can do when he rounds out that one. As Jardier coming into the final turn, another one of the McLarens maintaining the speed to the line this time around. As he crosses the line, it goes up to P20 for Jardier, but Marco Bischoff right now is on an absolute blinder. He is 2/10 up on his previous lap time. This would be a 0.5 if he can maintain this advantage to the end. He has got some traffic up ahead, but it might be placed quite perfectly, because he should be getting a very small slipstream from those cars up front, but shouldn't suffer too much through this final sector. Will there be any cars he has to stumble his way through coming into the hairpin? So Triggy's invalidated on the exit of turn 13, and he was maintaining that advantage, and he has even got a little bit of traffic as well. So he backs out that one. It'll be one final attempt for Marco Bischoff. Meanwhile, who was that improving? That was George Boothby improving up to a 32.7, and that is P4 for him, whilst Dario Iemolo, the race winner here last season, in P3 in that McLaren. And absolutely in the chat, spot on the money. The margins in this series every single week that we go racing are some of the smallest that you will find around, as every single thousandth can make a difference. We've seen times tied between drivers on several occasions. Marco Bischoff on his last attempt finding time, as well as the likes of Nils Knox. He's a bit further round as it stands. The number 8 car trying to see if he can eke out a little bit more of a margin. Look at those deltas. Everyone's there or thereabouts. George Boothby coming into that same area. He's found a 10th. Nils not quite improving on his time. Marco Bischoff coming into the closing stages of the lap. Can he wrap out the hairpin a little bit better this time now? Aidan Walsingham out of nowhere in the Mercedes as the clock ticks down. 32.6 for him, just 3,000 shy of what McCormack can do. And McCormack's retired. It won't be pole position for Dara McCormack. We'll see what the rest of his drivers can do. Nils Knox invalidates, but he will get one more attempt across the line if he has the fuel on board. What about the likes of George Boothby and Iemolo looking very quick as well? It's not done and dusted yet. as George Boothby coming through the line. He's found a 10th of a second. He needed a bit more, and he's got it for now, but Iemelo goes quickest on a 0.5. And I think those are the final bits there. So right now, Iemelo is sitting in P1. Niels Knox has managed to get himself towards the line one more time. Where is Marco Bischoff? Marco Bischoff not improving. He did a 0.672, but he invalidated again. And now all eyes on this man, Niels. He was sitting at the top of the timing sheets for a good few minutes. And he wants to reclaim that spot for the BMW. Nicholas Huben on a lap as well. He's found a 10th, trying to break his way in towards the 32s. Jardier coming into the closing stages of the lap now as well. I can tell you right now, Niels, he is not improving. He's very marginal with his Delta. Will the Italian on home soil once again have got it done at the dying moments? Tinko van der Velde in P13. He's found a 10th as well, but we'll see what can Jardier do as he heads towards the line. He's found 2 10ths into the 32s. He goes P15 for him. Whereabouts are the likes of Nicholas Huben? Niels Knox just a bit further round as well. Tinko van der Velde heading towards the line in his Mercedes, trying to make his way up through the order. P6 for the Dutchman as Nicholas Huben, the next of these Mercedes cars. Unicorns love 2 tenths up on his previous lap time, and it's only good enough. He didn't improve at the end. What about Niels? He's finding time. He might have just about done it in the closing stages, and he does by half a 10th. Niels Knox puts in a blinding final sector to find the margin that he needs to bring that BMW onto pole position here at Misano race circuit. An exceptional final attempt from the German driver, and he remained composed even with all that pressure at the final moments of that session. Niels Knox comes on through and puts together a stellar time, denying Iemelo for another pole position around this circuit, but he knows how to win around here. He's done it once before, and he'll be looking to try to do it again. Meanwhile, Niels, he may have won several races in his illustrious career, but Pro Series is one that is still Mrs. Man, but he's got himself in the best position possible if he wants to change all of that today. We'll be making our way through the grid in just a moment. But what a fantastic qualifying session, and what a sign of things to come. The margins as close as ever in the Pro Series, just a hair's width between each of these cars, and such a fantastic mix of them at the front of the field as well. We've got BMW, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari. It's just such a dynamic bunch between each of these outfits, and it is very much going to be looking to keep us on our toes as we make our way through 60 minutes of action. Will the weather end up playing anything into this, or will it just be a straightforward dry shootout on this Italian circuit? We'll have to wait and see on that front, but that certainly could be an extra variable these drivers end up having to take on into account. And how you judge your setup, how you judge, everything about your strategy is very much something that you need to be on the ball with. And as we look through the field now, Niels Knox then taking his third pole position of the Case King Pro Series, but still waiting for that opening win. And Iemelo starting on the front row alongside him in that McLaren. And George Boothby, your championship leader after taking the victory at Imola, not starting at the front of the grid this time around, and he knew how hectic it was last time out, so I'm sure he'll be trying to keep out of the chaos in the opening lap. Darren McCormack, good qualifying session from him, bids for pole. We're looking in his direction, but P4 only good enough in the end. Ada Walsingham, fantastic final effort from the British driver in that number 12. Nicholas Huben sitting in P6, climbing up the order as this quadruple group of Mercedes lineup, closing out with Tinko van der Velde in P7. Noah Reeder displaces his Sprout Esport teammate. Bit of a rare occurrence, especially over the course of one lap. Gets himself up in a P8. Great stuff from him. Matthias Gunn in the next of the McLaren's P9, and your reigning Pro Series champion Luke Whitehead at the tail end of the top 10. He'll be looking to make his way through the pack, but he's put on some mighty drives. Remember Watkins Glen, he was formidable in that Porsche. He was sending that car at every possible instance to make his way up through the order. And I'm sure that he'll be looking to do something similar today. Marco Bischoff starts in P11 with Amir Hosseini in P12. Matej Malinowski in that Porsche. Be very interesting to see how that car gets on around here. Adam Spansky for his return to the Pro Series starts in P14 in the number 6 ITB Racing McLaren. Followed up by Dennis Wietschalker, and a good effort once again from him. P15 as he continues to grow and develop in this series. Really great stuff from him. Dwayne Hutchinson, the Canadian, in P16 in that Aston Martin. Be an interesting car to see how that one gets on. Shouldn't have good straight line speed, but might struggle a little bit for that initial grunt and acceleration, and you really do need to be planted to the rear diffuser of these cars on corner exit if you want to set up that dive towards one of the many hairpins around here. Sasha Vassner starts in P18 ahead of Luke Addison, and followed up by his fellow South African Philip Menard closing out the top 20. I think we've got one Honda in this group, maybe two, and the first one is Marco Schada in that Yeet Esports number 19 car. Valentin Barrier, who finished P5 last week. The Frenchman, great drive through the field from him. He starts down in 22nd place. Matt Campo on home soil for him as well. Number 16, McLaren starts in 23rd place. Felix Brudern in the next of the Porsches. He starts in 24th. And then the next of the several Genesis Esports cars that we have in the field. Number 35 of Ava Santama starts in 25th place. And Paul Lobmeyer, the man that I've just wanted to give a hug at the end of last week, he starts 26th place, and we'll see how he gets on, as then followed up by Oliver Martins, next of the Aston Martins. Cody Sherratt in 28th position. And then we'll see the next of our group, Igor Ognorodnikov, for the 29th spot, with Lois Rainier closing out that one. The Frenchman starting at the tail end of the top 30 in this very, very talented grid. And there's the other Honda, and that goes away of Sakari Leitonen, the Finnish driver, starting in 31st place. And Eric Gessel saw some support for this man in the chat from the boss himself in 32nd spot for him, followed by Albin Manson in the next of the Mercedes. Wasn't quite able to improve in the way we would have wanted. Same goes for this man, Timo Karppinen. Would have maybe thought to see him a bit further up the order, but P34 only achievable at the end for him. Andrei Trafka in the number 28 car. Great to see him in the field as well. Very quick driver indeed. Samuel Foch had a very, very topsy-turvy time at Imola last week. He'll be looking to improve upon that performance and just be able to stay out of trouble, I think, on the opening lap. He had a questionable rejoin into him. It was no fault of Samuels whatsoever, but certainly did not set him up for a good day. Steinbrenner and Kolosov lock out the 19th row of the grid, with Krzysztof Makowski starting in 39th position. And then last but certainly not least, we have Nikolai Polyakov in that P40 spot. So we'll be getting underway very, very shortly, as Niels has brought himself to a little bit of a stop. I think he just kind of got a little bit ambitious at the gaps that he was putting over the rest of the field. At least I very much hope that that is going to be the case. Hopefully no technical issues for the BMW driver, the BF Plus competition car, leading the way for the third time. Raid from Matis Lateo, a Pro Series driver in the past himself. Big thank you and a big warm welcome to all of you that have just joined in. Welcome to LFM, the Case King Pro Series. If you haven't already, follow this channel, because action-packed drama in the best GT3 sim racing you can find takes place here every day on the platform, and every week here on Twitch in the Pro Series. We're about to get underway for another incredible race, with Niels Narks leading them down towards turn one. Can Iamolo make it to Misano race victories on the trot? We'll have to wait and see, but it's green lights away. It's a big start from Iamolo on the outside and heading in towards turn one. Side-by-side action, but Niels Knox holds on to the lead. George Boothby now trying to go around the outside of the McLaren. Got to be wary of Darren McCormack, though, sending up on the inside of him, but I think he's maintained position as they all fly on through. Several cars squabbling. Oh, contact in the background. Somebody's off already, but down in towards the first series of turns, and it is Narks Narks that still leads away. Chaos further down the order. Marco Bischoff trying to make his way through. And I'm trying to see who that was at top all down the order. De Campo and Barrier send down the order. Big moment there for one of the unicorns that love cars. And now side by side heading towards the hairpin for the first time. And you can see so many opportunities. Massier trying to send one up the inside. Oh, and almost contact between himself and Marco Bischoff. Side by side on the exit. The McLaren using a bit of a track and a bit more. Heading in towards the next hairpins down the inside. The number one car goes, trying to see if he can get himself up into P11. The Porsche surely going to lose out in a straight line here, and he does in the end on the exit. Meanwhile, back towards the front of the field, Niles leads ahead of Iemelo, Boothby, McCormack, Tinko, Van der Velde. But we need to keep an eye on this one because Noah Reeder using that McLaren straight line speed. Does he set one up the inside already on Nicholas Huber, Mercedes, who already had a little bit of a wobble at the moment on the opening lap, but no, nothing changes there. What about Adam Spansky? He's unable to do anything, though. I think Philip Menard has made his way through on Avasantama, and that is Hutchinson side by side as well, with Jarnier getting on through. Sasha Vassar trying to head up the order as well, and they close out the first lap in towards turn 16. A little bit of an awkward line there for the Mercedes. Could leave himself vulnerable in towards turn 1. We'll have to wait and see. But the start that Narks needed and would have wanted. Half a second the advantage already over Iemelo. But now needs to get his head down and try to see if he can eke out that gap. But we know how good Iemelo is around here. We need to wait and see. Is his yellow flags again? Yellow flag further down the order. Several cars, I think, in an instant. Igor Ognikov is around. And he's not the only one there indeed, as there's, I think, Marco Schada, several cars sent around, and Luke Whitehead as well. He is one that's dropped down the order, so something on the opening lap of the race happened to Luke Whitehead, again, for the second time in 2 weeks, and the man that had consistency above all else last season has found himself in a spot of bother in the opening 2 rounds, and of course, whilst we do have drop scores in this series, you don't want to be using them on the opening 2 races. He's trying to make his way back through on Felix Brudert, who's got a little bit of damage on the front end of that Porsche. I can't see so much damage on Luke Whitehead's car. But it's been an awful streak of races for Whitehead, even closing out the Season 12 Championship. It was not what he would have wanted. I need to check in, though. Darren McCormack applying the pressure to George Boothby for the last of the podium spots. Can't make his way through on the championship leader as they all barrel on down towards the hairpin. Luke Whitehead, what can he do? Trying to go around the outside. That's brave. Mercedes versus Porsche. The BMW trying to get involved as well, over and under potentially. Former number 3 car sends one down the inside as we head in towards turn 14. Squeezes the Porsche on the exit. Does he make his way through? He does indeed. Does the Porsche lose any more positions? It's looking very tight between them. Sends up the inside. The BMW, who was about Bukowski, and Felix Brudet's lost out very heavily there as the Porsche, Nikolai Polnikov, surges way up through the order. 10 positions gained on the opening 2 laps. Him, Samir Foch around the outside into turn 1, maybe side by side. The 2 Porsches and the McLaren of De Campo, I think, went into a little bit of strife himself, getting a great view of the opening action, heading through turn 3 into 4, breaking that 50-meter board, trying to go around the outside. Can he do? I don't think he can. Surely there, our leaders still as they were a moment to go, but it's carnage and chaos as we've come to expect to know from the Pro Series, and that is the Honda, both of the Hondas actually trying to go 4 positions. We've got Leighton trying to go around the outside of Valentin Barrier, damage on board him, sent on the inside. That's Igor Ognikov coming out of nowhere in the background, dives down the inside. Steinbrenner is going to make the move stick. Meanwhile, what's going on here? We've got De Campo, Schada side by side in towards turn 10. The McLaren surely going to come out on top of that one. The Honda's pretty pacey in a straight line, but the McLaren ain't a slouch either as they head on down once again. This drag race down the back straight is incredible. Meanwhile, 2 warnings for Teemu Karppinen already. That's not how you want to start your day. Matty De Campo, he got away initially, but the Honda on his way down the inside in towards the apex side action. There is contact there, and Kolosov trying to make his way through it. The Aston Martin surely can't make that one stick. He makes it stick on one around the outside, though. McLaren is going to get the inside line back. Mountain Barrier trying to find positions as well, and he's unable to do so. But will the stewards have something to say about that? They may well do. Of course, they do tend to have a bit of a busy time, and so is Marco Bischoff versus Amir Hosseini trying to go around the outside. No, that's a very heavy bit of contact there. Maciej Malinowski in the Porsche trying to find his way through. P12 at the moment for the number 30 car And not an ideal exit either. In actual fact, may leave himself vulnerable to the likes of Adam Spansky in the ITV Racing McLaren, looking towards the outside line, decides not to send it up the inside. And also fastest lap of the race last time around was to the likes of Tinko van der Velde. So patient sometimes in these races, and we've seen him pull off strategies at the very dire moments, going for those overcuts and then letting other people make the mistakes, make them battle amongst themselves, and then bring it on through at the very dying moments. We'll have to see how that one plays out, but your race leaders are as they were. Massier trying to close the gap. He can't do so. Marco Bischoff not able to close down on the 296 on Amir. Trying to go for an overlap on the exit there, but just not quite able to get the margin that he would have wanted. Checking in on our leaders, you can see no one has really spread apart too much last time around. The laps coming on in now. Fastest lap now goes to IMLO, closing the gap down, doing a mid-.8, just half a tenth quicker than your race leader. And it's only been 7 minutes of action so far. And a welcome over 300 of you sitting in the chat. I hope you're enjoying this, because I tell you what, buckle in, because we've got more of this on the way for the next 53 minutes. You think the opening lap is chaos and carnage? That's nothing. These drivers, they usually decide to kind of have a little bit of a lull at some point in the race, and then everything catches on fire simultaneously. And that is what we live for here in the Pro Series. All of the drama and action that we want to dive on into. Niels Narkso still leading the way in that BS Plus competition, BMW, and trying to see if he can keep last season's race winner behind. Different car, but very much still dialed into this circuit. George Boothby, after being put under pressure from McCormack not too long ago. Did you see? Now doing a little bit of weaving there, just trying to break that toe. We go on board the rear diffuser of your race leading. See that McLaren not really gaining in a straight line. Someone that is, though, Dara McCormack. He's not quite able to stick with that Ferrari ahead of him in the opening sector. That downforce and handling capability of the prancing horse is just a little bit too much right now for that Mercedes to be sticking with. White flag out for Nicholas Hooper. I think a bit of a wide moment in towards the hairpin. Manages to gather it all up, though, and having a bit of a look further down the order. We've got likes of Albin Manson battling with Timo Carper, and they've got Luke Whitehead on the way, as well as Makovsky sent it down the inside of Polikov, who briefly got himself up into 29th place. But Makovsky, he's been driving pretty aggressively on the open. Contact there. Polikov manages to just about gather it all up, and now Samir Foster, 3 Porsches almost coming together, almost 3 wide on the run towards turn 1. Marco Schada's involved in all this as well, and Polikov trying to send down the inside. Schada sends it around the outside of Samir. Incredible scenes through the opening sequence. Brudin versus Polikov, Samir versus Schada. Samir wins that one out. Polikov wins out the fight with Felix Brudin. Can the Porsche send one down the inside again? There's contact once more. A very aggressive driving between all 3 of these Porsches. You can see Martin de Campo's now got past the Honda in the background. They're side by side, they're off entirely, and Samir Foch goes on through, and Felix Brudin spun around on the exit onto that back straight. Chaos and drama in the mid-pack there, but I can't look at it entirely. You've got Andre Trafka's made his way through, I think. So side by side with Albin Manson now in towards the hairpin. The Mercedes trying to hold that inside line. McLaren versus Mercedes on the exit. It's going to be a drag race, and speaking of which, we check in towards our leaders. The margin roughly maintained, but Nils Nyhulk now opening up that gap to almost a second. The first real bit of distance we've seen between those cars by Emlo, Boothby, McCormack, absolutely nose to tail, heading in towards that final sector. And this circuit is so tricky when you're in these trains, when you're in such close proximity to one another, trying to judge your lines, because you know that you need to utilize all these curves to their absolute maximum if you're going to be quick. As McCormack almost into the back of Tinko van der Velde there. A little bit of a mistake from the Irishman. He's now got the company of his teammate there. How aggressive will Tinko van der Velde be? We'll have to wait and see. But you have to try to utilize every single millimeter of this one, but you can just go over the limit so easily, so quickly, and it can go wrong very, very soon. Looking at the stewards' inquiries, I can tell you they've noted several things. They're all under investigation, but unsurprisingly, with the amount that have already come on through, we haven't quite made any decisions just yet. We've had a couple of no further actions, but still waiting on any time penalties come through. But we'll keep you posted on that as soon as they make their way on to the server. Marco Bischoff once again locked into the slipstream of Amir Hosseini. Went a little bit wide there on the exit of the hairpin. That McLaren closing the speed and the distance all the time, and he might just have enough of a run here. Can he close it before turn 12? Really, you need to be alongside before that apex. You see him, he's got a bit of damage on the rear diffuser of that car. Marco Bischoff trying to brake as late as he dares, getting a great view of the Venturis underneath that 296, but the McLaren unable to make enough of an overlap there to make anything stick. And whilst Iemolo briefly ended up going quicker because I just need to check in, Luke Whitehead's now made a move over Timo Carpenter. We'll try to get a replay of that one as the reigning champion continues to try to recover his way up through the order. After briefly going fastest in the race, Iemolo has not been able to stick with the pace of Nils Narks. Someone, though, that is making his way back on through as we head in towards that series of corners. Timo Carpenter, he was maintaining position. Is it a mistake? No, it's a little bit of a mistake on the entry towards turn 13, and a very tidily made up move there from Luke Whitehead. Sends one up the inside, gets on through up into 25th position, but we know that he'll be definitely wanting a bit more than that. Meanwhile, checking in on this little squabble over here, Jade Hutchinson versus Jardier. These two were side by side on the opening lap of the race, and they haven't left each other's bumpers since. Just 3/10 between them, with Jardier also applying the pressure to Dennis Wietschorker just in front as well. As we now head down the back straight once more, the 7th lap around this circuit. And I imagine that every single one that we have on to the end is going to be just as drama-filled and chaotic. Hutchinson definitely looks like he's got decent straight line speed, but that initial acceleration is just not allowing him to quite latch onto the McLaren of Jardier in the way he wants. Of course, Jardier, whilst, you know, it's a little bit like DRS trains in the world of Formula 1. It's, you know, we don't have that sort of device in the world of GT racing, but those principles where if you've got DRS off the car in front, it allows you as a bit of a protective measure over the car behind. Same sort of principle when we're locked into this slipstream train. Dennis Wietschorker in that McLaren, very fast car in a straight line, is giving Jardier just that little bit of speed boost that he needs to be able to keep Hutchinson from closing the distance too much in the grand scheme of things. Each of those gaps can be so pivotal in terms of the way that your race ends up playing out. Narks, oh, there was a little bit of contact there between the two McLarens. Narks has opened up the gap to over a second now. Boothby, half a second to Iemolo. But the battles right now involving the likes of Adam Spansky, McLaren versus Porsche, looking towards that inside line. He can't do anything there. What about Jardier trying to send one down the inside? Dennis Wietschorker, got to be mindful of Hutchinson, and Sasha Vassner also right now in hot pursuit of that group as well. And we'll see as I think Eric Gessel has gone around, and you see the cars off in the background there. What has happened to him? He gets going again. The Porsche, though, has gone around. And we'll try to see if we can catch a replay there of what happened to the number 39 car. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a head in hands from his greatest supporter in the chat as well. He's battling away with the LFM Ferrari. I think that may have been Philip Manar. And heading on down to the hairpin. What happens here? And oh dear, that is very unfortunate. And there's even a little bit of a secondary bit of contact for Eric on the exit as well. Very classy rejoin, just reverses off the track ever so slightly and gets himself underway and safely back up to speed, but not what the Porsche driver would have wanted. Looking up towards the pointy end, Narks going a bit back and forth on the delta between himself and Iemolo, manages to keep himself in P1, of course, but that gap bouncing between 7/10 to a second. George Boothby still applying the pressure to Iemolo, but has gapped McCormack ever since that slight mistake. You know, we saw the Irishman struggling to keep up with this lead group of cars in the windy stuff around the circuit. The toe was very much keeping him in play, and that little bit of a mistake just maybe has opened up that gap enough to a point where he wasn't able to really stick with that train. As I think we may have the first batch of penalties on the way. We do. We have a 10-second time penalty for the number 25 car for a collision on the opening lap. And that is going to belong the way of Felix Brudern, who has found himself retired in the pits, I do believe, unfortunately. So disappointment there for him. And as far as incidents go, that's the only one that's been concluded without a no further action at the moment. So several incidents investigated by our wonderful, wonderful stewards doing a lot of work in the background. But that is the only one that has resulted in a penalty so far, and absolutely Noah Reader doing exceptionally well at the moment. 2 positions up ahead of his 2-time Pro Series champion teammate and the #1 man, not just in the server, but on the LFM platform full stop, who's still squabbling away with Amir Hosseini in the Ferrari. But Noah Reader, great qualifying from him, applying the pressure right now to Nicholas Huben, another formidable, mighty, mighty driver, and trying to see if he can further get himself inside of that top 10 as someone else that comes into the pits, Nikolai Polyakov, and I have a horrible feeling this could be a drive-through penalty. I think we've already had a couple dished out to certain cars already for track limits. We've got chaos taking place once again out the tail end of the order as that is Ogrodkov versus Steinbrenner. I think Ogrodkov has given up the position and giving it back. Maybe a bit of contact towards turn 1, I'm not too sure. But I'll tell you what, Leighton in that Honda immediately on the attack and sweeps up that position to get himself up into 34th place. Looking back towards our top 3. Once again, heading down this back straight, George Boothby. You see, half second away from IMLO. And now flying on down towards this tricky part of the lap. Once again, so much commitment needed. And there you heard it. Little bit of a lift there. It's not because he needs to. You could go onto that part of the circuit, carry speed through, and you'd be fine for the next corner. But he's doing that lift because he's got to be wary about track limits. It's not worth that 300th that maybe you get from carrying that bit more speed if you end up getting a drive-through penalty that completely annihilates your race later on. Same principle applies for when you're entering the pit lane. You know, entering the pit lane, 2 kilometers an hour, shy of the delta versus, versus 0.5. The margin is not enough to risk getting a stop-go 30, especially when you're in such a tight field of drivers. Matthias Kuhn looking very close to the back of Aidan Walsingham, battling for P6 as they've broken. There's a bit of a gap between themselves and Tinko van der Velde, which means that Walsingham doesn't have that same level of protection for the Mercedes driver, and he's got McLaren, Mercedes, McLaren all applying pressure right now, and he could be in trouble heading towards this hairpin. Matthias Kuhn, does he sense an opportunity? He senses it, but he doesn't look to capitalize on this occasion. Takes a chunk of curb and a half on the inside of turn number 8 as we now head into this double right-hander. Watch out for the likes of Huben and Ida, because you can see drivers kind of send this surprise lunge towards the inside line, very much like Luke Whitehead did in towards that closing sector at Watkins Glen when we were last there, being able to carry that momentum on through and then just send one up the inside at the very final moment. And meanwhile, he's got a run and a half because the straight line speed. That Mercedes is good enough, but it's big contact there, and the arena now might take the pair of them in towards the hairpin. Then 3 wide, surely you can't all fit through there, lads, and no arena. Nothing that he can really do there about the exit, but he does manage to jostle the position, makes his way through up into P7 for the Sprout Esports driver, the lead Sprout Esports driver in the field. And Matthias Kuhn drop 2 positions in the process of that one. Will the stewards have something to say about that? We'll have to wait and see. Ogrodkov still applying the pressure to Niels Steinbrenner. I think we've had some more time penalties come on through. 15 seconds for the number 18 car for another collision on lap 1. But that is the only other penalty that we have had come on through. And that number 18 belonged to, if I look through the field, it's maybe someone that left the server entirely, if I'm not mistaken. No, there we go. It was Kolosov, actually, right behind this battle, getting a great view of Ogrodkov, sending it out the inside of the number 13 car. And this time around, I don't think there'll be the need to concede the position. We didn't see, obviously, what happened the first time when those drivers went toe-to-toe, but managed to get the job done. Looking up towards the pointy end, I can tell you it's getting very busy. Although Luke Whitehead, I think, has just made up another position over Cody Sherratt in the Mercedes, trying to continue to chase his way up through the field and reclaims the spots after the carnage that took place earlier on. How does he get it done? Is it a mistake from the Ferrari drivers? Their contact involved. Well, you can see we're on board. Luke Whitehead here going through this double rank king. A little bit of a slide for Cody Sherratt. And then on the exit, nothing changes there, so it must be a dive towards the next turn, or just no, Cody Sherritt's actually just going to let him through. He's taken on Kylo's advice in the chat, and he just lets a Mercedes driver on through. He's no, you're faster, you go on through, I'll be alright actually, thank you. I don't want to scrap out on this occasion, and decides to fall in behind instead. The gaps between our leaders briefly closed up between IMLO and Narks, but there's still there about 7/10 separating McLaren and the BMW. George Boothby, 4/10, make that 3/10 behind the McLaren. Dara McCormack has managed to regain a bit of ground. Tinko dropping a bit away now, second between himself and his teammate. And Aidan Walsingham having all sorts of pressure being applied by this man. Noah Reader in the McLaren, opportunistic stuff, taking 2 positions in one go, as I think Team of Carpenter just may have swapped around with Andre Trafka as they headed towards the line there. And we'll get a little bit of insight into who's been benefiting from the opening chaos. You see, Noah Reader, he's only gained 1 position at the moment as Veet Shorker versus Adam Spansky. No, it's actually Scooby. It's Adam Spansky trying to get past Janier around the outside, make that the inside. Veet Shorker trying to go down the inside of Massier. Oh my goodness, I feel like this is going to get very, very busy in just a moment. 3 McLarens on the exit, all trying to power down as much as they can. The Porsche out front, I think, just about has enough margin to escape, but we'll watch these two for the rear diffuser of Veet Shorker. Janier versus Spansky. Janier's got mighty straight line speed. It's enough to get on the inside. Veet Shorker now side by side, and that's Hutchinson getting involved on the outside line as well. Veet Shorker covers the inside in towards the hairpin. The ITV Racing car and the Canadian side by side on the exit, and Hutchinson around the outside. A mighty move from the Aston Martin. And who's out into the pits? It's Marco Bischoff. I think Marco Bischoff might have a drive-through penalty. Surely that's the only reason why he'd be making his way into the pits at this point in time for track limits. My goodness, disaster for the 2-time Pro Series champion. Because, of course, we do have a mandatory pit stop in the centre of this race. I didn't hear the pit window open. It's either he was going for a mighty undercut. I'm not sure. I have to see what took place there. But I didn't hear the pit window open, but then it could have been so much carnage in this one. Side-by-side Hutchins a little bit deep on the brakes, and immediately back on the attack. The ITV Racing McLaren trying to send it up the inside, goes through the over and under on the exit. Adam Spansky trying to use that momentum, the straight line speed in the McLaren. It was just a box for Marco Bischoff, so pit lane has now opened. Trying to go around the outside. Hutchins defends that inside line. He parks on the apex. Switch back again for the number 6 car, trying to head towards that outside line. But he can't do anything there. Just watching, waiting for another opportunity, and it might come sooner rather than later. Next batch of drag races all taking place here. Noah Reader is one of them, but I think he's a little bit too far away from Walsingham on this occasion. Meanwhile, Andre Trafka and Teemu Karppinen battling side by side on the exit, hairpin to hairpin, and Albin Manson's getting involved in the party now. And we know how quick the Mercedes are around this circuit. Will that Mercedes start to creep up to the back of the Raging Bull once again? Lamborghini closing the gap to this number 28 McLaren as they get in towards 12, 13, and then down in towards 14. Manson's going to have a go with setting one at the inside. Oh my god, there is contact! There is contact between Carpenter and Manson now trying to make that the outside line. Somehow, Andre Trafka, the man we're on board with, keeps it going. The cars fade away into the distance. That'll give him a bit of a breather sigh of relief there, but he can't make his way through. Yellow flag for Luke Whitehead. I think Luke Whitehead is out. Luke Whitehead, I think, has just suddenly, he's got it. The yellow flag came out. I think, in actual fact, okay, no, crisis averted. Crisis averted. Luke White, I think, is just coming into the pit lane to do his stop. But the game was a little bit on the sensitive side. And the yellow flag, he just dropped out the order so suddenly. I had a horrible feeling that he'd had a technical issue like he did at the final race of last season. Thankfully, not the case. Meanwhile, someone has got an issue, is Nils Knox, because that 1 second gap that he had at the opening phase of this race, IMLO and Boothby reapplying the pressure. Drive through penalty for the number 35 car. And that is for an incident for causing a collision on lap number 2. And that 35 car, who does that belong to in the server? That goes the way of Abasantimo, which is a shame because he is battling with Oliver Martins at the moment. So hefty penalty there for the McLaren driver. Disappointment, I am sure, for him. Meanwhile, Amelo really seems to have the bit between his teeth now, and now it becomes a very interesting game of strategy. Do you go for the undercut? Do you go for the overcuts? We've seen the likes of Tinko van der Velde go for extreme overcut strategies. He then allows those cars that have pitted before him to squabble out amongst themselves, lose themselves overall time, and then he starts to capitalise and fly on through the field. Meanwhile, Hutchinson as Adam Spansky, I thought they'd swap positions, well they have. It's because these cars starting to come into the pit lane as well. Spansky being one of them, Addison in the pits just behind as well. We've also seen drivers like George Boothby go for very, very harsh undercuts and really just secure track position, but then you've got to work with those dying tyres at the end of your stint. So much a case of trying to balance these things out, and Niels actually has maybe a little bit of concern. I think that's Bukowski up ahead. Of course, traffic will have to look to give way, but it doesn't work quite the same way that it does in Formula 1. In GT, if you are a lap down, you cannot defend to the car that is lapping you, but you don't have to kind of just pull off and get out of the way. Now, some people do that anyway, if they don't feel like it's in their interest, but Niels could find himself in a little bit of a tricky scenario if he's not careful. That McLaren of Iemelo closing all the time. 3/10 now the gap between those two, but managing to just about keep the McLaren behind to say that BMW was likely to have good straight line speed in the end, as I think we've got another time penalty on the way for the number 22 car that has a 15-second time penalty for a collision on lap 2 of this race. And that number 22 car, who does that belong to in the server? So I'm trying to find them up and down the order. Can't work it out. Yellow flags coming out for Huben and Mateus. Couldn't that is because they've just headed into the pit lane. More cars heading into the pit lane as well as they look to try to serve their mandatory pit stop around the midpoint of this race, but just being a little bit cautious to not lose out too much in the way of track position for those that may be undercutting them. But looking up and down the server, I think, unfortunately, the number 22 car is the one car that has left the session, so I'm afraid I don't know who that is in the server on this occasion. But, oh, Lloyd's Rainier, apparently, that would potentially figure, because I don't think I still saw his name in here. Abasantima's just come into the pits. Of course, I think that'll be to serve his drive-through penalty. He's been dished out for that instant on the opening lap. Big thank you to all of those that have been following over the course of the stream. We're just 20 followers away from 1,600. So if you are enjoying the action that you are seeing, we're just halfway through this race. So much more still on the line and to go at the end of this one. And so if you are buckled in, ready to see how this one plays out, do follow this channel, because races like this every single week in the Pro Series delivering some of the best action that you can find on ACC and GT3 racing. No Reader still applying the pressure to Aidan Walsingham, but cannot dispatch of the Mercedes. Nils Knox, look at that. That's the wily old fox aspect of someone like Nils. Has so much experience. Just a little bit of an ease towards the pit lane. Thinking about it, just maybe trying to get Iemelo to box. He didn't get Iemelo to box, but Darren McCormack has decided to bite the bullet on this occasion and go for this slight undercuts over those cars ahead. Same for Hutchinson as he makes his way into the pit lane, as also Malinowski, I do believe, in the Porsche has come in as well. I'll tell you what though, Iemelo very much under pressure at this stage. Iemelo's just, Niles is under pressure from McLaren of Iemelo. Of course, the Veloce Academy driver leading the Veloce crew right now in the server, showing the big boys how it is done. Recent recruit, like I say, he knows how to win around this circuit. He had to fight his way back through the field last season in order to do it. Just a bit of a squirrely exit there from the BMW up ahead. And this McLaren just seems to be right now feeling a bit more composed than the number 8 that leads this race. You can see some of these cars, those that have made their pit stops, starting to just kind of maybe give a bit of concern to these race leaders, because as soon as you throw traffic into the mix, anything can happen. Absolutely anything can happen whatsoever. And Niels making his way through once more. The rotation of that McLaren just seeming a little bit more pointy than the BMW that is leading the way, but the straight line speed of that M4, of course, remember, he doesn't really have much in the way of a slipstream. Does anyone decide to box on this occasion? Niels does. This time it is not a fake from him, and George Boothby, I think, has followed him in as well, and he has, barreling on down towards the pit marker board. Hopefully none of these guys have sped into the pits, as Noah Reader also on his fantastic drive up through the field. Put on some brilliant overtakes over the course of this race, capitalising on those opportunistic moments. Meanwhile, Valentin Barra battling away with Marco Schada, currently sitting in P8. I'll see either of these cars going to box, and yes, the answer is both of them. And we've seen some interesting pit entries into Misano in the past. It's a little bit of a tricky one because it's such a fast-flowing circuit. It really does kind of encourage you to just absolutely send it on the entry and to kind of maximize time. And then that barrow really starts to creep up on you very, very quickly. Now, I've seen something rather concerning in the chat. The suggestion that Niels may have got a stop-and-go 30-second time penalty. We won't find out the answer until he leaves the pit lane. Unfortunately, I can't see it mine, so I'll be relying on the wonderful people that provide me with my little bit of spotter and engineering support from the comfort of your own homes as they exit the pit lane, because if he has sped into the pit lane, that's when it will appear. He'll be crossing the line now. And on the exit, we'll wait to see if alarm bells head off in the chat. Has Nels managed to make it through there safely? Waiting for confirmation from somebody into the final sector, and he is clear. So Niels Darksen, thank you, Zapsy. Niels Darksen has managed to maintain position, and also importantly, Dara McCormack on that undercut strategy has not gained in terms of track position. So even though there's not a major offset between his tyres and those in front, he's not really benefited from that undercut. And meanwhile, we now have the likes of some of the other cars that are coming into pits as well. I think IMLO has just boxed 2. And meanwhile, Tinko van der Velde, I've said he's done it in the past, going for these long overcut strategies, looking to maybe try to do it again. Meanwhile, Adam Spansky and Jade Hutchinson had a bit of a squabble not too long ago. They swapped position. I think Oliver Martins squabbling away with the Genesis Esports Ferrari, trying to go around the outside. Goes for the cutback on the exit of turn 8, but I don't think he's going to be able to outrun the 296 up ahead of him there. As we wait and see, IMLO still in the pit lane. As it stands, he is registering at being in 38th position. I think we just got a bit of jankiness with the pit board. He should end up bouncing his way back up through the order in a moment. But here comes Niels Nars, George Boothby, and Dara McCormack. I tell you what, it's looking like it could be pretty close between these guys. Coming to the end of the pit lane now, you should start seeing, there they are in the background, but they've got those couple of apexes to go on through. We'll go on board the McLaren, trying to stay as tight towards the inside line. BMW surely going to flash across the inside. He does, but where is the Ferrari? George Boothby, and George Boothby made his way through. So Boothby then pitching that a little bit earlier than Dara IMLO. McCormack wasn't able to gain out of it, but George Boothby did. And strategy now playing into the hands of the championship leader. More penalties, I think, also have been dished out to cars in the field, and we'll try to keep up with all of these. We'll try to keep up with the action and chaos up and down the order as well, because after a pit stop, this is also another time where things start to get rather busy. Our race leaders maintaining position. Sammy Foss, the only car that hasn't come into the pits just yet, but several cars very close together. The likes of McCoskey versus Carpenter, Anderson versus Veetstalker as well. As looking as we've got a 5-second time penalty for number 19 car for forcing another car off the track. And that goes away on Marco Schada for the Honda drivers. So a cry of despair, I imagine, from Honda fans in the chat. Not what they would have wanted to see for the GT Sports car. And a 15-second time penalty for the number 37 car. That was for causing a collision. That car belongs to Polikov, who has now just made his way back out of the pits, I do believe. Of course, drivers got those time penalties given to them before they stopped, means that they serve that time in the pits. And McCormack, with these tyres up to temperature, IMLO just seeming to struggle a little bit to stick with the likes of Boothby and Marks. It's only 3/4 of a second, but with the margins that we've seen between these cars at the pointy end of the grid, this is just looking slightly nervous right now for the Italian driver, and the Irishman may be looking to make a move up the inside. He thinks about it, shows a nose. Oh, he sort of catches the McLaren off guard, but I don't think he's going to get the overlap that he would have wanted. Tinko van der Velde comes out of the pits. He went for that overcut strategy very late to the end of that pit window as well. And he's a couple of seconds behind his teammate, but we'll have to see how much of an advantage will those fresher tyres have as we get into the closing stages of this race. Mateus Gunn versus Marco Bischoff, still very close to one another. All these cars chasing down Noah Reeder, who has gained just one position in this race, but he's had to fight for them. Slight misnomer right now is Sammy having gained 35 positions in this race, but he, of course, still has his pit stop to make. I think we may have another penalty on the way. We've got a warning out for the number 6 car. That is Adam Spansky for contact. Maybe that was with Hutchinson. Those two have been scrapping away for quite a while now. And a 15-second time penalty for the number 18 car. Sammy, the last car to come into the pits, makes his way into the pits. And the number 18, who is that? That feels familiar. It's Kolosov again. So Kolosov, unfortunate for him, apparently maybe a drive-through penalty for Luke Whitehead for track limits. So disaster for the reigning champion. If that is the case, we'll see if he does come into the pits in due course. Sammy now dropping down the order as he has served his pit stop. But looking at our order, so now things have settled in terms of stops. Niels led this race from the very start, from pole position. Half a second now to a different car, George Boothby, the undercut strategy, working for last week's race winner. And he is very much applying the pressure at the moment. This Ferrari on home soil. Can he make it to Italian victories back-to-back? But that BMW is going to be hard to pass. It may punch a big hole in the air. It's a pretty wide and chunky car, but it is very much one that has the legs down the back straight, and we'll try to get a bit of an impression of that. McCormack is applying all sorts of pressure to Iamolo, who's really struggling in this second stint. The second now between himself and Boothby, lacking some pace. And you see that BMW just able to pull away from George Boothby. Just no real concern. As there's some of your updates in terms of penalty points, and it's a little bit, not really the points you want to be racking up over the course of your LFM season. White flag out for Nicholas Hubert again. I think just a bit of a slow run for him. Hutchinson applying the pressure to Adam Spansky once more, but just can't get alongside the ITB Racing McLaren. We'll have to continue to settle for P15 at the moment, but plenty of opportunities still on the horizon. And Kylo, our ever informative maestro in the chat once more. To give you an idea, these penalty points kind of coincide with the incidents that the stewards are investigating. Yellow flag for Luke Whitehead. I think that could be the pit lane entry, and it is. So it was a drive-through penalty for Luke Whitehead, the reigning champion, after having 10 incredible races, as Eric Gessel has also, I think, come into the pits as well. So disaster for the number 39 car. But Luke Whitehead, your reigning champion, who had a streak of 10 immense races, the final 2 that did not count towards this tally because of 2 drop scores applied for the series, has continued that combination of bad luck and just not being able to string a race together that he would have wanted in a row. And that is really not how he would have wanted to open up Season 13 to defend his title, because he's now going to have to rely entirely on the next 10 races to really surmount a challenge, because the likes of George Boothby, P1 last week, currently sitting at P2 as it stands. Dominic Blyer in the chat as well. Merc OP, well, it seems not on this occasion for both Luke Whitehead and also in terms of our race leaders, the BMW, Ferrari and McLaren's making up those top 3 as it stands. Mercedes was definitely a car that we anticipated being at the pointy end of this grid, but remember, the custom BOP produced by the community and the wonderful people of LFM, giving us this incredible close racing, may have just slightly weakened that Mercedes advantage around here. Not quite able to put together the sort of pace it has done in the past. And your top 3 absolutely nose to tail as it stands at the moment. I'm seeing all those follows come on in from people. Big thank you. We're only 11 followers away from that mighty 1,600 total. It'll be incredible if we can reach it by the end of today. As George Boothby still applying the pressure, trying to see if he can just get Niels to make a little bit of a mistake in one corner or the other. Just anything that he can do. Stewards' inquiries also coming on through as well. Trying to keep an eye on all the battles, all the chaos and carnage we've got going on. This 4-way scrap between Malinowski, Jardier, Spansky and Hutchinson as well for P12. Also raging on as it stands, and also our closest fight on track. Looking through the order, of our stewards' inquiries, I think we've had a couple more dished out. There's a 15-second time penalty there for a couple of cars as heading on down. Giant Hutchinson maybe has a run on Spassky, not on this occasion, as they head towards the hairpin. They'll have to wait for another opportunity to come his way. Pit window has now closed, but as we said, everyone else already done their pit stops. So catching up, 15-second time penalty for the number 32 car. I do feel like that is new, and that penalty belongs to that's Philip Manar, the man that dropped out of a very heavily fought for P2 position last when we were at the final race of the season in season 12. Unfortunately, dropping down the order on this occasion after causing a collision on lap number 9. Number 19 car has also had a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision on lap 10. Unfortunately, I think that number feels familiar as Luke Whitehead has emerged out of the pits, has just dispatched of Mattia De Campo, and that's Marco Schada that unfortunately has had that time penalty applied to his end total. A warning handed out to the number 6 for avoidable contact, but nothing else has changed there. Steinbrenner versus Samir Foch, battling for position, and once again a fantastic example. It doesn't matter where you are in this field, there is action top to bottom in this grid. And this is what this fantastic championship, what this platform delivers every single week. Stick around for the end of the race, because not only will we hopefully have some post-race interviews, but we'll also be giving you all of the details on how you can get involved in this sort of racing and drama yourself and start competing for some mega prizes from our sponsors. George Boothby still applying the pressure, and IMLO starting to bring himself back into contention. McCormack has started to drop away. Fastest lap of the race went the way of the McLaren driver last lap around, 32.965 for the number 17 car. He's got one extra car ahead of him, but like I say, he knows how to win around here. He knows how to get himself into that P1 spot, and he'll be trying to dispatch 2 of the very best if he is going to look to make it to Misano race victories on the bounce between seasons. It's George Boothby. Ferrari is so good in those opening couple of sectors. So apparently we're asking for an update on the schedule for Mr. Carpet's drive-thrus. Obviously I can't quite see anything from my end, but everyone is on the edge of their seats waiting for that one to come through. Apparently McCormack also on 3 cuts as well. That's also likely one of the reasons where you start to see these cars drop away from the pace that they've been executing for the rest of the race. You know, when they start to get a bit nervous about those corner cuts coming on in, and then on the flip side, you'll start to see cars kind of really got to ramp up the aggression in the closing stages. If they've got some to spare, these drivers, the reason why they are the best at what they do is they try to eke out every advantage that they can find. Trafka side by side with Oliver Martins. Martins got past the McLaren earlier on, it seems, but these two are still squabbling away for position, and that McLaren is looking pretty quick in straight line, flashing the lights as a little bit of weaving from the Aston Martin sends the McLaren towards the outside line. They'll be side by side on the run down towards turn 12, but the Aston's got the legs over the number 28 car and is able to keep Trafka behind unless he sends one out the inside. He doesn't. And the Aston's able to park it on the apex and maintain position. Niels Narks opens up the gap just a little bit to the 2 cars behind, 3/4 of a second between himself and George Boothby, and a similar gap now between IMLO and the British driver. So very much a back and forth scenario. Marco Bischoff feels like he's been staring at the back of this Unicorns of Love Mercedes for a long time, but just has not been able to find enough pace to dispatch of that Mercedes in front. We've seen that car has had some pretty good pace in a straight line. And of course, there was that incident earlier where Noah Reeder in the fellow Sprout Esport McLaren was able to capitalise, make his way on through. Meanwhile, this squabble for P12, Massier and Jardier, good friends, of course, Veloce, Yassit, sister teams between them. And apparently Aidan Walsingham, 3 cuts for him as well. And he, of course, he's got a little bit of a margin, but he won't really be looking to hunt down Noah Reeder for that P6 spot. If anything, he'll just be trying to cement that gap between himself and Nicholas Huben, who sits in P8 as it stands as they all fly on down the back straight once more. We'll go on board with Jardier trying to close the distance, but I'll tell you what, the man actually might be in a better position. Hutchinson again, he's got good straight line speed in that Aston Martin. but hasn't been able to make a position stick. Now, to answer the question in the chat, I was under the impression that Nils didn't have a win in the Pro Series, but Kylo is your statistician to confirm that for me, because I also saw hints in maybe how one in the past, which I may have forgotten about. And also, apparently, Tinko van der Velde losing a bit of pace because he's downshifted, I would assume, a bit too aggressively and has got himself yellow damage on the engine. Uncharacteristic mistake there from our champion from a couple of seasons ago. So not that he would have wanted. And they continue flying on around this circuit. Nils Narks has continued to lay down the gauntlet. Now a second between Boothby and himself in the fight for the lead. And I tell you what, Jardier, best position he has been in to try to make a move onto Massier, looking towards the outside line, trying to brake as late as he dares. He's got to be careful of Adam Spansky. You can kind of see that McLaren lurking in that digital rear view mirror in the centre console as Jardier, a little bit of rubber banding. I think Massier's connection rather renowned, but this is certainly the closest onto his back straight that Jardier has been for a while. Can he do anything about the Porsche that sits in front, closing the distance all the time? So is Hutchinson to the back of Adam Spansky as they fly on through. Hutchinson trying to see if he can do anything, but he just never quite gets close enough. And then there's mid-corner capability of that McLaren, particularly how it utilises its front tyres, just a bit better. That's a mistake from Massier, puts him under some additional pressure from Jardier, but he is not able to capitalise as they head in towards 15 and 16 then. He is hunting around the back of that Porsche, trying to duck and dive and find any opportunity he can. Meanwhile, Steinbrenner versus Leighton. I think they swapped at the hairpin. They may even swap again by the time we get towards turn 12 and 13. But I don't think the Finnish driver in that Honda's quite got enough. Oh, it's a bit of a mistake, though, from the BMW. And diving down the inside has to leave a space. Steinbrenner does give a space to the Honda drag race on the exit. Heading through a little bit of rubbing between them. And there's again contact. Steinbrenner, 2 taps on the Honda's out in the gravel. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be something said by the stewards in all of that one. Matty DeCampo makes his way through Leighton and manages to get himself back around. But that is far from what the Honda driver would have. Oh dear, that is, that's a bad day. That's a very bad day, and he is going to get going again. But that is very much gone south for Leighton. I think the first instant, I'm intended to suggest that was the setup. It looked very much like Leighton was being very aggressive on the exit. Oh dear, we have a little bit of a connection futtock as we make our way through and look towards Tinko van der Velde versus his teammate. Of course, much fresher tyres for Tinko, but it looked initially on the exit of the hairpin. It was very aggressive from the Honda, constantly trying to close that gap and actually put them on a very awkward line in towards turn 15. But then the subsequent contact, Steinbrenner, I don't think kind of eased off enough. Track position had been secured at that point from the Honda, and he just didn't quite seem to back out of the throttle as much as he needed to. Then sent the Honda around. They kind of get glued to one another. I don't think any malice involved in it, but just a misjudgment. And unfortunately, as that Honda lit up its tyres going off into the gravel, that lack of traction, especially in the sort of TC0 meta that we are in at the moment on ACC, just causing him some grief on the exit. Tinko van der Velde just 0.2 of a second behind McCormack. 3 seconds down is the number 24 car relative to our top 3 that still sit as Narks, Boothby and Iemelo. 11.5 minutes left on the clock, and still definitely opportunities for things to change as Hutchinson trying again around the outside of Adam Spansky. Be a mighty move if he can make it stick. The Aston, we know how good it is on the brakes, but he just can't quite get the overlap that he needs. But he may have just provided enough distance between the ITB racing car ahead of him and Jardier in that number 7, who's hunting down Maciej Malinowski in his own squabble right now, to just potentially get enough of an overlap. I think McCoskey versus Carpenter. Oh, it's all kicking off. Further down, just outside the top 20. Carpenter losing out, not just to BMW, but Alvin Manson as well. Carpenter, can he fight back on the exit? He can't. And he may even out. Oh, he can send one up the inside very, very late. I thought that it was a done deal there. And McCoskey's going to try to run away in this. We'll go on board with Vanity Barry, the Frenchman, as he watches the Mercedes and the Lamborghini having the drag race down towards the back straight. McCoskey should be clear of any of this. Not 3 wide, surely. I know there's not long left on the clock, lads, but that's never going to work. Carpenter trying to hold that inside line, but he's got a little bit deep bit of contact. Vantin very into the back of him, almost pushing the Lamborghini wide on the exit. Vantin, I think he's going to make his way through on the Mercedes. There may be something said in the stewards again, and we'll try to check it on inquiries. Vantin, though, looking very racy, trying to head towards the outside of turn 16. Can't make that one stick. Over and under potentially on the exit. Carpenter's got to be careful for track limits, I do believe, and he's just about got the tiniest of overlaps towards turn 1. Straight line speed on the Aston Martin, good. Trying to go around the outside. Can't make that one stick there either, and has got to be careful that the Swedish driver, who I'm sure is going to be driving with a little bit of anger in that car behind in number 26. Doesn't make his way through, but Vantin better exit there. Damage on the front of both of those cars. Sends out the inside, and I think Carpenter now maybe a little bit at a disadvantage. He could even be a further disadvantage if Albin Manson sets the run up out of turn 6 beautifully, which he does towards an outside line. May get a little bit of a tow from the Frenchman up ahead. Vantin has managed to escape away from these guys have been battling for a whole lap now, but Carpenter is going to hold on to that one temporarily unless Manson can say anything more about that. Your leaders still Nils Nyhox. Manson down the inside. It already has forced the Gripax engineering car to open up the gap, and the way that Teemu has been dropping positions over the last couple of laps, I would have to imagine that Mercedes, which we know is good in a straight line, it has the inside line, more penalties on through. We'll try to get an update on that in a moment, as well as the fight between Hubert and Bischoff. Carpenter tries to switch back at the very fast parts of the circuit, and unless he dives it towards the hairpin, he doesn't. He will not be looking to reclaim that position. Vantin's been able to escape just a little bit up the road in all of that. Narch, Boothby, Iamolo, still your podium positions right now. Tinko van der Velde applying the pressure to his teammates, and Marco Bischoff still staring at the back of that Unicorns of Love Mercedes. As we check in on further time penalties, that's a 10-second time penalty for number 13 car. I do believe that will be for Neil Steinbrenner. If I'm not mistaken, it is to the BMW for that incident with the Honda driver of Leitenden. Also, still fighting amongst one another. 8 minutes left on the clock. These races absolutely fly on by because there's drama from start to finish. Hutchinson, P15 as it stands, trying to find his way through as Martins versus Philip Menard. Philip Menard got very wide, and he's lost 2 positions in the process. So what has happened to the Ferrari driver? We'll try to catch a replay of that one. Down towards the hairpin they went. Does he just get it wrong? Oh dear, I'm not actually quite sure what happened at all there. He seemed to have already conceded the position to the Aston Martin and then just concedes another one to the McLaren behind. So I'm not quite sure what took place in all of that. Meanwhile, final few moments left to go in this race. Iamolo versus Boothby, as Nart still holding on to that half a second gap, that crucial gap that he's been able to maintain throughout the majority of this race. Tingo van der Velde squabbling with his teammate. Marco Bischoff versus Huben for P8. 4-way scrap for P12 between Malinowski, Jardier, Spansky and Hutchinson. Advancing barriers made up another position over Krzysztof Makowski now, as the Aston Martin driver continues to try to make his way up through the order and bouncing back from the incidents at the very beginning of this race. And Tinko van der Velde now, does he think about move? He's got the tyre advantage, and I think he's got the position down. Dara McCormack doesn't fight him too hard. There's going to be a bit of a squabble, though, on the exit. Drag race between the two pink Mercedes heading down towards turn 12. I thought he was going to concede it a little bit easier than this, but Dara McCormack, he is here to fight and he is here to play. Tinko versus Dara. Down in towards 12, 13. Great racing between the pair of them. And Dara McCormack with the over and under does maintain position. Tinko trying to someone up the inside. Almost contact between the teammates. Just about enough racing room given. There's still side by side on board with Tinko now. Switchback after switchback. Heard him having to back out of the throttle there. Does he send one up the inside in towards turn 16? He does. I think even a little bit of a tap on the entry of these two. Absolutely squabbling amongst each other. That lead group of 3 had already got away. Now it's just about the fight for P4. They've got the gap behind. Tinko now looking up the inside of turn 1. Can't make it past the Irishman there. But with that tyre advantage, Dara on some of the oldest tyres of the bunch. And Tinko definitively on the freshest. This overcut strategy obviously hasn't allowed him to really contend for the race win, but it has allowed him to apply some pressure to his teammate and maybe get the job done for P4. in the closing stages. That's how hard he's pushed. He's got to be careful for those track limits. I think he may have even backed out of the throttle there as well, just to try to fend off any late warnings being handed out by the game. Niels, 7/10 clear of George Boothby. The same margin between P2 and P3 as well for Iamolo in that McLaren. Has it been all they wrote, or will we have drama for the race lead in the closing stage of this one? Tinko van der Velde again locked onto the gearbox of his teammate on board the front splitter. Let's see how much does he gain down the back straight. You would expect these cars to be pretty similar. They're similar about every other aspect that you can imagine, but down in towards the next turning, maybe Dara just using a little bit less aero than Tinko, and is just able to maintain that advantage, but you can see he's almost pushing his teammate along out of the hairpin. They go through 15 into 16, and Tinko will have to try and wait for another opportunity. Marco Bischoff again, still absolutely locked onto the rear of this Unicorns of Love car, but just unable to find enough of an overlap to make it stick any given instance. Also, we have crept over that milestone now. Over 1,600 of you here to enjoy all this LFM goodness. Big thank you for that, and buckle in, because these last couple of laps are going to be just as chaotic as the rest of them have been. Trafka versus Martins in towards the final sector. Trafka just about holding on to the advantage at the moment, but Martin sends one up the inside downtown from the Aston Martin, and Martins gets himself into 21st place. I don't think Trafka had any idea that that was on the way. Late braking manoeuvre there from the Aston Martin, utilising one of that car's strengths to its absolute maximum, and the number 28 was unable to do anything to defend against that one in the end. Tinko van der Velde still glued to the rear of his teammates, and just checking in with our leaders. Those are the gaps. 3/4 of a second. It's ridiculous when we consider that this feels like one of the bigger margins that we've seen in this race, and it's less than a second. This is the Pro Series, and Tinko van der Velde is now trying to find an opportunity, maybe towards the inside line. Dangerous stuff here. Dara McCormack just about giving enough room. Tinko's going to send out the inside again. Bigger overlap than what he had last time. Almost door-to-door racing between the pair of Dara. Will have the inside for turn 15. Tinko will have to go the long way round. It's bringing Noah Reader bit by bit into play. They can't fight too much more than this. He's only a couple of seconds behind, but McCormack still holds on. But he has had a bit of a compromise run out of turn 16. There could maybe explore an opportunity towards turn 1 now. If he's got enough momentum, looks towards the inside line, thinks about it, but he can't make it stick. 2 more laps, 2 more big opportunities down the back straight in order to make something happen and get himself up the order. Marco Bischoff, same goes for him. Defensive from Huben, trying to hold back this McLaren. Bit of an awkward exit though. This could be the move for Marco Bischoff. He's been waiting nearly for the entire race for. I said it kicks off at the end. Down the inside, the number 1 car goes. Unicorns of Love versus Sprout Esports will go to the helicam as they fly on past each other. Marco Bischoff does get on through. Mateus Good in that P10 spot has closed the gap between these squabbling cars. The McLaren may even be able to make an opportunity happen in the closing stages, but after so long, Marco Bischoff finally gets himself up into P8. But we know how fast that Mercedes is in a straight line as Tinko send one up the inside, and he gets a little bit of a bump on the rear diffuser as a thank you for McCormack, and he's going to go side by side on the exit once more. Also, Iamolo very close to the back of George Boothby at the front. It's going to go down to the wire between every single one of these fights. Tinko versus McCormack. McCormack on that inside line, trying to see if he can hold on to P4 at the very end of the race. The gap between the leaders is coming down as well. McCormack back on through. Tinko back down the inside of the hairpin. Side by side is like a mirror image of the last 2 laps once again. In towards turn 15 they go. Noah Reader still closing the gap every single turn. Final lap of the race, I think, would have been initiated, and it's just started. There we go. Tinko van der Velde forced wide by his teammate, and these two are putting on an absolutely stellar performance. Hutchinson has finally dispatched of Adam Spansky, but I don't think I'm going to be able to catch it on the replay, because battles everywhere you look in this order are going down to the wire. The battles between your leaders, Narks, Boothby, Iamolo, separated by less than half a second between each of those cars. Tinko van der Velde and his teammate Dara McCormack, the 2 Mercedes, still going toe-to-toe again. A little bit of contact. Tinko on those fresh tyres, pushing his teammate along. And Noah Reader, the gap was around 3.5 seconds. It's now down to less than 1 as the McLaren looks to see if he can surge his way any further up through the order. Niles wide on the exit, the hairpin. Boothby still applying the pressure as much as he can. And it's going to be one batch of final drag races. Niels He knows he's got a good car underneath him in his final sector. The Ferrari's mega in the first, but this BMW M4 is just an absolute titan down this back straight, and I don't think Boothby's going to be able to put a move towards the hairpin. It would rely on a mistake from the German, who's been absolutely infallible. In towards the hairpin they go. Boothby too far away. I am alone. The academy driver unable to displace the championship leader. It's looking like they may stay as they are. McCormack looks like he may have held on to P4 in the end after that scrap. But after so many times contending at the top end of the grid, the Wily Fox, the number 8 car of the BS Plus competition, BMW driver Niels Knarks crosses the line to win here for the first time in the Pro Series at Misano. Boothby takes P2. I am alone P3. Tinko van der Velde gave it everything he had with McCormack. He finishes P5 with McCormack in P4. Ida takes a great finish to P6 in the end. Mateus couldn't try closing the gaps, and the Unicorns of Love Mercedes could not make it happen. Malinowski holds off his sister teammate of Jardier Hutchinson, did get Spansky in the end and crosses the line in P14. Other battles though still going on to the end. Trafka versus Martins is one that's been scrambling away for a few laps. It was dive down the inside of turn 16 that for Martins had got the move done. It's going to be a little bit of a drag race to the line, but I think the Aston Martin's just about going to get it done. He does, and Alvin Manson applying the pressure on the final lap of the race to Christoph Makowski. I think will be our final scrap to the line. Makowski comes out on top of that one, and in the end comes home in 26th place. And one very notable mention, but not for the right reasons, Luke Whitehead, the number 3 car in the server, the reigning champion, down in 31st place, and I think that car's going to go straight off into the wall. Yep, there we go. A very unhappy man in the cockpit of that Mercedes, making the switch to that car, and it's just not one that seemingly has benefited him so far. He'll have to wait for an opportunity for things to go his way another day. And 2 races down in the Pro Series. Great results for some drivers, but for those that have had 2 poor rounds like Luke Whitehead, that is not how you want to start off the season, because that means you have to rely, like I say, on those next 10 rounds in order to try to bring another championship home. But Niels Knarks gets the job done here at Misano. He started on pole. He put himself in the absolute prime position that he needed in order to deliver. And he has managed to get that race victory that's been waiting for him after many, many rounds of competition. He has also hopped in for an interview as well, so we will look to talk to our race winner in the server as well in just a moment. And he has got that BMW to the top of this order under pressure from the very beginning. But an exceptional drive from Niels, so we will talk to him in just a moment and bring him on in for an interview. Niels Knarks, a fantastic drive from you, say, under pressure from the very start of that race. You got the job done in qualifying, but between George and Iamolo, they didn't give you a single moment to breathe. You must be relieved that one's over and that you've added another win to your tally.
I think it was the first win in quite a while, but yeah, first stint, Dario was, he was never further away than 0.7. I think there was half a lap where I thought I might be able to get him out of the draft, but then he just attacked one corner and he was right back in, so I knew it would be very, very tricky to have a calm race. So it was all about, I don't know, just not making the mistakes onto the straights, because there I had the edge a bit. I think the BMW here has power, because the long wheelbase doesn't quite want to rotate around the corners. So they probably couldn't really ever attack there with a straight line speed ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, just to give you those stats there, your first win since round 7 of Season 8 in the Pro Series. So it has been a little bit of a time since you've been at the top step of the podium, but when that opportunity was presented to you, that you grasped it with both hands and delivered when it counted. Give us a perspective from you inside the cockpit. Misano, it's a circuit that kind of, it's an easy one to drive around in the sense of there's nothing too dangerous about it. There's not too many horrific curves to send you flying off into the gravel. But on the flip side of that, it's very easy to get those track limit warnings and rack up those warnings over the course of the race distance and then get a game-changing drive-through. How difficult was it to keep those cars behind, sustain that pressure and that defense, but without pushing the margins just that little bit too far?
Yeah, I think the first couple of laps in the race, since I was leading, I gave myself some time to get warm with the car and how it felt, and then maybe lap 5 or so, I tried to really go the pace that I could and got closer to the track limits. Yeah, it really is. It's about getting a feeling there, and I don't know, becoming one somewhat. And once you're in that groove, just try everything to keep your focus up. There's many situations where there's a chance to get carried away and think, I don't know, 5 laps ahead or 10 or something, and then just have to remind yourself, next corner, next corner, next corner, and there's nothing else you really have to worry about. And then just repeat what you've practiced. Be super precise with your brake markers, and rather be early than too late. And that's what I try to focus on, to really never overshoot a single corner, because the time loss you have is so big. I'm pretty sure Boothby would have seen it coming and had his nose right in there. Would I had to open it up just a tiny bit? So I just needed to make sure just to not have that tiny error. Maybe there was the pace wasn't the fastest, but certainly avoided any mistake, I think. And I was so lucky with the qualifying as well. Just in the last corner, somehow found 200s or something and brought it over the line. The lap wasn't that good actually until that point, so I was super lucky to start from pole, because I think if it was second or third, I wouldn't be in for the win here. I think the others were faster, but yeah, I could just stay ahead.
Yeah, well, like I say, that's qualifying can be such a pivotal part, especially when we have these shorter style of races. Still an hour, I'm sure once you've got that level of pressure, it doesn't feel like the shortest race distance in the world, but that P1 spot paying dividends in the end to secure that victory. And also great tips to anyone in the stream that is looking to get themselves into sim racing, how you put together a race win like that, and just taking it a step at a time, allowing yourself to kind of relax into the car and settle into that groove. Fantastic advice, I think, for anyone watching. Next week, we're going to be looking to go into a home circuit of yours, heading to the Nürburgring for round number 3. How are we feeling for that one? Any ideas how the BMW may be looking to fare there?
I think at one point last season, the in-game BOP changed quite in favor of the BMW, I think, which also meant that everybody was on it to go fast and bop it. So I'm pretty sure I have a couple kilos in the car. And after a win, everybody's furious with you and tries to drive your car and push it even further. So next race, I certainly have a couple kilos on board. And that's one stat I actually wanted to get rid of. Every time I win a race here, I'm probably the oldest LFM winner.
I couldn't possibly comment, Niels.
I think I'm older than both guys behind me together.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can disagree with you on that statistic. But what that does, those years, the wealth of experience behind the wheel of that cockpit today was what ended up getting you across the line in that P1 spot. So it has its advantages, I must say. But yeah, very interesting stuff heading into the next round to see how that all starts to play out, and whether or not the BMW will have the same strengths at the Nürburgring as well. We have to wait and see. But a big congratulations to you, Niels. Fantastic to see you on the top step of the podium once more after a little bit of a time away from there. And big thank you also for coming in for an interview as well, and good luck for next week.
For sure. Have a good one. Thanks and bye.
Thanks, Niels. Take care. Great stuff to talk to our race winner from today. Like I say, it had been a while since we had seen the German at the top step of the podium here in the Pro Series, and he has finally got that job done. He went to the Aston Martin last season, has gone back to that good old faithful BMW M4, and it has started to go his way in the second round of the season. Niels may be looking to shape himself up as a championship contender here in season 13. What a battle that would be as well. Of course, George Boothby, another very strong finish from him. Consistency with what saw Luke Whitehead, his teammate, take to the title at the end of Season 12. And very much stories that are opposing one another at the moment. George Boothby, a P1 and a P2 for him so far. And Luke Whitehead very far down the order in both occasions, outside the top 30 by the end of today. So disaster for the reigning champion and the two-time Pro Series champion at that. We'll have to see if he can look to bring it back as we make our way through the season. Having a bit of a look, though, through our race results. Officially, though, we can see here Niels Narks topping the standings and George Boothby. I am running out the podium. McCormack defending after that incredible battle with Van der Velde, his teammates. Ida, Walsingham, Bischoff, Huben, Kuhn, Hosseini, Malinowski, Jardier, Hutchison and Spansky round out your top 15 with Wietstorka, Addison, Vasta, Lobmeyer, Sherratt, Martins, Trafka, Barry, McCoskey, Manson, Carpenter, Foch, Menard, Schade and Whitehead to the end of the top 30. Such an unusual feeling to see that number 3 car down that far down the order. And then your final positions then closing out with DeCampo, Santama, Steinbrenner, Gessel, Ogrodikov, Lettinen, Kolosov and Polikov, with Brudern and Rainier, your 2 non-finishers from today, having a little bit of a tricky time in their races, but an incredible one once again, busy as you like in the Pro Series. But Niels Niles managing to deliver when it counted. And he mentioned that final corner was, just kind of that bit of a difference maker. That somehow doesn't surprise me, because his time just suddenly clawed up into that purple delta and it got that pole position that provided him the means to take this race victory and deliver it in fashion, holding off the Veloce crew of both George Boothby and Dario Iamolo. Another incredible race in the Pro Series, as you would expect, and another incredible amount of support from all of you. Big thank you to those who followed in the stream. We hit that 1,600 follower target in that one. You guys smashed it, and if you have enjoyed the action that you enjoyed this evening, then do look to follow the Twitch channel, because we will be back next week for the action kicking off at the Nürburgring. But if you're sitting there watching and thinking, you fancy a bit of a go behind the wheel yourself in all of this, and you can also head over to the LFM website, lowfuelmotorsport.com, get yourself signed up, get yourself a license. You can work your way up through the ranks and compete in series like the Case King Pro Series Championship, and also along the daily racing, of course, we have on the platform. There's endurance and all other good stuff on the way as well. There is original AC1. If maybe GT3 racing isn't quite your thing, AC1 can deliver you all of the goodness from MX-5's touring cars, open wheelers, you name it. Lots of stuff that you can get involved in. Also, the WRC Championship hosted on the platform as well. If a little bit of off-roading, purposeful off-roading, is more to your style and liking, so plenty to get involved in. If you also just want to be a part and really linked into this ever-growing community, you can also head over and join our Discord server, get all the latest news and updates from LFM, and you can discuss all of your sim racing, real racing, and all of that wonderful stuff, and all of your hobbies amongst your fellow peers, and dive into the world that Low Fuel Motorsport has to offer. Another incredible week of action here at the Pro Series, but the week does not end there in terms of things, because we will be back on this channel on Saturday, from Saturday midday to Sunday midday. Excuse me, actually 6-hour race for that one, because we have the opening round for the Virtual Endurance Masters kicking off on Saturday, where we will have myself and some budding incredible commentators in the booth to bring all of that action to life, where drivers competing in a 5-round championship, 18,000 euros worth of prizes on the line. The Virtual Endurance Masters kicks off once again, where the best of the best go toe-to-toe in a slightly revamped version of the Endurance Series that we came to know and love for the first time last season. So do join us once again on Saturday to see all of that kicking off, because we will have that action. And I'm sure that whilst at times it may die down into a little bit of a lull compared to what the Pro Series delivered, you have to think so over 6 hours, I can still guarantee you, talking from experience, there's usually at least some sort of piece of carnage and chaos taking place on the circuit at one given time. So don't worry, you'll be able to buckle in for that adrenaline-thrilled ride as well over the weekend. And then we'll be back next week for the Pro Series, where we'll be heading to the Nürburgring as well. So look forward to seeing all of you then, and continuing to go on this incredible journey. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching tonight. The amazing support once again, and warm welcome to all of those that joined, and look forward to seeing you next week. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.